Imagine a world where...
Growing up in the 90s, infomercials were everywhere. Everyone had a product to sell us, ranging from gadgets for the kitchen to tools for the garage and everything in between. Music as well would suffer the same fate with compilation commercials, not all of which were infomercial length, of course, but some of them were. The point is, many of these commercials are still burned into the minds of many of us today. Just look at like the top comment on the Pure Moods one. Now, one commercial specifically stood out to me way back in 1992. So much so, in fact, my grandma wrote a check, popped it in the mailbox, and then 3 to 6 weeks later, I was the proud owner of the Ray Stevens Comedy Video Classics VHS. At 9 years old, this thing was like the holy grail to me. There was no other tape in my collection quite like it. I actually owned the vinyl single of the Mississippi Squirrel revival, and much like the Alvin and the Chipmunks little Christmas song, I drove my damn mom crazy with that thing. But this was different, man. This was a freaking video of that, and a bunch of other songs. To this day, whenever I'm feeling like I need a good old dose of innocent comedy, and I love vulgar comedy, let's be clear, this is my go-to for that purpose. Probably not the first of his kind, and certainly not the last, Ray hit a sweet spot in his career thanks to the VHS technology itself, which put his music and antics into the hands of potentially millions of people who had never seen or heard of him before. So here we are nearly 30 years later since its release, and I'm just talking it up, so... does it still stand up? Is this thing still funny with its 90s low-budget tech and feel? Or did it age terribly with the rise of the green screen and cheap special effects? Let's find out. The first song that opens the video, Help Me Make It Through the Night, starts out so serious. Or not. I imagine grandmas and grandpas watching this with their grandkids back then were probably all peaceful, smiling, just thinking, oh, this is just so wholesome. And to his credit, Ray is an excellent musician with a well-established career before this VHS. He was not a one-trick pony, that's for sure. I like to believe that even with a little silly hint of the harp scene, many people were legitimately fooled for a moment, wondering why they weren't getting a funny Stevens song.
Take the ribbon from your hair.
I mean, for real. Why so serious?
Hold it, I say hold it, son!
Now that's what we all came here for, isn't it?
That ain't moving me! Let's put a little fire in it!
My damn black tooth gets me every time.
And smile, it's black tooth grin.
If you haven't ever seen this before, you likely might be just shaking your head like... It is absolutely straight up some basement level sight gag goofball humor. 100% dated to the early 90s in my opinion, but unlike a lot of things that are dated, this still kicks ass. I love the enthusiasm that he brings to every single gag in this. My favorite part of this is the courtroom scene, when the judge bangs the gavel down. Oh my god.
Order in the court!
I laughed so hard at this as a child. I rewound my tape multiple times, and every time thereafter I'd watch it, it always had that little wrinkly part, you know, right there where you'd rewound the damn thing so many times.
Order in the court!
It was like the first time I'd ever seen that level of a joke. That playing of my expectations, basically. It just blew my mind.
Let that devil take tomorrow.
And that's where grandmas and grandmas probably did stop the tape, but not mine. Now granted, this certainly wasn't made for kids considering it has gags that portray alcoholism, implied drug use, murder. But none of them really come off as particularly violent or disturbing. It's more like a live-action Looney Tunes cartoon in a way. And ending as majestically as he started, the song quickly descends into pure chaos once again as we fade out on Ray wiggling that big-ass cigar. Now, the older, more experienced video editor in me is irritated by the fact that he stops wiggling the damn cigar before the shot fully fades out. It's like it should have faded out a little bit sooner, or he should have wiggled longer, damn it, but it's not really that big a deal. I see it. Next up is what should be a creepy song in all honesty. But the topic at hand, stalking, is somehow made comedically entertaining by Ray. It's almost certainly because all of the harassment type behavior in this coming from Willard is kinda harmless and funny more than it is actually threatening or sexual or violent.
You don't know me, Margaret, but I know you.
Now, Willard has a particularly nasty habit of calling this poor old lady named Margaret each night from a pay telephone to taunt her. I love the structure of this song too, since the verse is kind of narrating to us what's happening.
Every evening about midnight, he'd slip off alone.
But for the chorus, all the music goes out and Willard himself just makes the call.
It's me again, Margaret.
The second time, which is overheard by the police chief tapping the phone line.
Are you naked?
Naked. N-E-K-K-I-D. Naked. Redneck spelling bee. Now, finally caught in the act by two detectives, Willard saves the best lines for last.
Wanna hear me bark like Ren 1010?
What the hell, Ray? Now, escorted downtown, like all prisoners, Willard is allowed one phone call, and when told this, man, this shit-eating grin on his face.
And then he dialed the telephone.
This is as hysterical as when he calls the number.
It's me again, Margaret.
I just find that hilarious. That after all the shenanigans, they didn't think for a second that he'd call her again. That's just A+ comedic writing, man. Now, thrown in a cell for who knows how long, Willard still has a plan for Margaret when he gets out, involving 3 things which I can't for the life of me picture in a scenario of how he would use them.
I'm gonna come over there with a weed eater and a live chicken and some Cool Whip.
The most amazing thing about this, though, to me, is the ending, which went completely over my head at 9 years old.
Why, yes, ma'am. You can post bond right over here.
Not only that Margaret is the one bailing him out, but God, this final line?
How much for those handcuffs?
Wow. That's amazing. Up next, Santa Claus is Watching You. This song's quite amazing in my opinion. This lovely string of pet names he calls his girl in the opening line is so full of rhythm, and it's just like an instrument in and of itself.
Now, baby doll, sweetie pie, sugar plum, honey bun, angel face, you know you better be good.
It launches this thing into full force from the start. It's hard to not want to tap your toes to the beat. Singing to his baby from her front yard, the little voice drop of the main line always gets a smile out of me.
'Cause Santa Claus is watching you.
As well as the elf.
He's everywhere, he's everywhere.
A little more upbeat, a little more romantic. Not once, though, does the song lose that edge of silliness that Ray wrote it for. I certainly don't enjoy this one as much as the previous 2 tracks, but it's still a good track. It's a silly, harmless video, and it deserves its spot on here, especially considering the effort put into the storytelling involved, however small, where he's clearly having lady troubles. Again, though, the silliness never lets up, with Ray describing Santa's sleigh.
Full of toys with the dual exhaust side mirrors, the foxtails, mud flaps, and leopard skin seat covers.
As well as naming a few reindeer that I never heard of, but hell, I guess you gotta have some backups in there in case one of the main ones gets sick, right?
Bruce and Marvin and Leon and Cletus and Jordan, Bill and Slick, Do-Right, Fred, Ace and Clyde and Blackie.
To be honest, that's about all I gotta say about this one. I guess because it's holiday themed, you know? It's fucking the middle of June right now, so watching this is just kinda like, eh. Fire this one up at Christmas, otherwise skip right ahead to the next video. Another personal favorite of mine, and probably one of yours too if you've ever seen an Ernest movie. Now, tackling a more morbid subject, Ray gives us his take on how funerals used to be performed in the old days when the mortician would simply bring the body to the home. Lending the family folding chairs for the viewing, apparently this thing would last all night long, and people would sit up with the dead, so they didn't have to leave them alone.
When the nighttime come, you'd have to sit up with the dead, cause it wasn't right to leave them alone.
Never heard of this. Now, Ray recounts the story of his old arthritic Uncle Fred who died, keeled over at 97 years old, and ended up stuck in that position. And after tying his body down with log chains, late night when a storm erupts, a bolt of lightning flashes, and the unthinkable happens.
But Uncle Fred just sat right up.
Uncle Fred. He's Bobby in the Ernest movies. Scaring the living hell out of everyone there, chaos breaks out as everyone runs for their lives, including Ray himself, who stumbles right into an open grave. That would be terrifying. And while the overall shtick itself may grow weak before it ends, it's still nonetheless a great song, funny video, and it entertained me countless times as a kid. I love it to this day.
Next time I'm just gonna send flowers. Yeah.
Okay, Surfin' U.S.S.R. is definitely the track that confused me the most as a kid. I didn't know dick about politics, the Cold War, USSR, Russia, or any of that stuff. And I still really don't. Forgive me if I have very little to say about this one.
Loyal to the party and the party line.
Yeah, that joke went way over my head as a kid. Definitely the least funny so far, with kinda silly gags like this. I just don't don't find watching a bunch of old men dancing around in bathing suits very entertaining. In fact, I find it kind of gross. I don't even really know what's going on here because I'm not really listening. I think some dudes from the Soviet Union defected to over here because like they saw it was Goler. I don't know. It just really isn't that entertaining. Like I can't imagine anyone wanting to watch this video, much less listen to this song. Like if you're gonna put on a Ray Stevens song, are you really gonna put on Surfin USSR? Yeah, I didn't think so. Especially when you got the bread and butter up next. That's right, the one, the only, the Mississippi Squirrel revival. God, where to even start with this one?
Well, when I was a kid, I'd take a trip every summer down to Mississippi.
Remembering a single event of his youth, Ray tells us of the time that he found a squirrel and carried it into church one morning only for it to escape and cause havoc among the parishioners. Beginning with its beeline for Harv Newman's pant leg, all hell breaks loose.
Something's got a hold on me. Yeah!
Man, it is madness.
In that sleepy little town of Pascagoula.
Pasca what?
It was a fight.
Yeah, to this day, I have no idea what the hell the name of that town is.
It was a
Pascagoula. Pascagoula. Alright, now we know. With Harv dancing down the aisles like a madman, the squirrel escapes his cuff and shoots to the other side of the room where it eventually settles in the waistband of Sister Bertha Better Than You. Oh, this lady.
Should have seen that look in her eyes when that squirrel jumped her garters and crossed her thighs. She jumped to her feet and said, Lord, have mercy on me.
Even better, in a panic, thinking that the devil or something's got a hold of her, this crazy old bat starts confessing her sins.
And then she started naming names.
Ooh!
The day the squirrel went berserk.
Not really sure why this one stood out so much back then or even today, but for one reason or another, this is definitely one of Ray's most recognizable songs. I don't think I'd have it any other way.
It was a fight for survival that broke out in revival.
Now, next up is Ray's classic track, The Streak. I always loved this one as a kid because they had that little cartoon of Ray running around butt naked. Butt naked!
I was just standing over there by the tomatoes, and here he come, naked as a jaybird.
I guess this dude is as messed up or maybe even more than Willard since he's taking his harassment out into the public, which some people seem to like apparently.
Fight for
But not everyone.
pretty.
Now the video stays interesting as Ray, as usual, plays multiple characters. One, a newscaster interviewing a man who has witnessed the Streak's harassment of Ethel.
I hollered up devil, I said, don't look at the...
That poor old woman.
Too late, she done got a free shot.
Who seems to be enjoying it. I mean, Margaret had a dark side, so why wouldn't Ethel?
Who's that me? Ethel? Is that you, Ethel? Where do you think you're going?
Well, there you go. She done took off with him. That's how you know I'm Southern. She done took off with him.
You get your clothes on.
I swear, it feels like this track is over as soon as it starts. Alright, that's it. End of the video. Yeah. Come on. Come on. Really? Did you even watch it ever again after the first time that you watched it? Be honest.
Everything is beautiful.
Yeah, I thought so. The serious track of the video, I just have little to say about it. But for what it's worth, it's wholesome. It likely raised a lot of money for some charity. I'm sure Ray donated his money or something like that, you know? Probably. Whether he did or he didn't, it's wholesome, damn it, okay? I don't have to like it, but it's wholesome. It ain't comedy, it ain't a classic, it ain't my cup of tea. It's like watching a Michael Jackson heal the world kind of video, just on a smaller scale, and I don't want to offend anyone if they're religious or anything like that, so there's nothing wrong with this song. It's just for a video called Comedy Video Classics, I expected everything to be comedic, and this was just Ray's serious song, so I have no problems with it, but I usually stop the tape before it gets to that point. That said, this still is one of my favorite tapes of all time. I love holding this thing in my hand. It makes me feel like I'm 9 years old again, you know, when I even look at the actual tape. I mean, some of you out there had this, so you remember this maroon print label. Surely, it had the little address on there of where it came from, Clyde Records in Nashville, Tennessee. I don't know, this thing holds a whole lot of memories for me, and if it holds any for you, let me know down below what they are. And as always, if you enjoyed this kind of content, hit the thumbs up button and let people know that what they just watched before they watch it was actually worth their time. And it helps small channels like mine grow. I need the help growing, so please do, and I'll see you again next time when we review more weird shit from my childhood. Thanks a lot.